Hey guys, I just wanted to go over some of the products that are available here in Japan. If you're not in Japan and you see a product here that you're interested in, the same product may be available overseas, or maybe a similar product will be available overseas. If you really see a product here that you really like and you want to get a hold of it and you can't find anything similar, leave me a comment. Maybe we'll see if we can work something out. Maybe I can buy it for you and send it, or find a site where you can buy it overseas or something like that. So there's basically two things I want to cover. One is the Kawai brand, which makes a lot of stuff for small animals, and the other one is this guy. So I read a number of books on how to keep chinchillas, for both English books and Japanese books, and a lot of the English books mention something called a chinchilla, which is apparently like a granite or marble slab, right? So I've not actually seen those for sale in the regular pet stores. I've seen a ceramic slab, which I assume would work basically the same way, and it's probably cheaper. And I've seen aluminum sheets, which I'm sure work just as well. In fact, this particular thing here, it looks like something for camping because it's kind of light and hollow. This is supposed to be a cooling pad. This is actually a stone pad from a grill, but I've never used it for cooking, so I have that available as well. But before I got either of those things, this room that I have the chinchilla in, it can get pretty hot in the summer. Now I'll run the air conditioner, but in case the air conditioner were to fail, or maybe he just feels hot even with the air conditioner on. So for that reason, I looked around to see what was available, and I found this bad boy on Amazon. Now, you might say, so what? We have the chinchillas overseas, so we don't need this guy. Maybe, but first of all, this is pretty large, and it comes with this nice base. And the thing that's special about this is, I'll use my suction cup here, is that if you can see, it opens up, and inside you have some insulating, plastic foil, whatever it is, and you have an ice pack. So if it's hot and you need to keep your chinchilla cool, you can put this ice pack in here, and it will keep the top, and the top only, of this reasonably cool for a very long time. So it doesn't make it super cold. Maybe that much heat doesn't transfer, but it'll keep it cool for like 8 hours or something. Sometimes what I'll do is, if it's really, like if it condenses water or something, it usually doesn't, but if it does, you can put a piece of fleece on top of it. This is heavy enough that he can't open it, he can't move it. You wouldn't want this to fall. It's definitely heavy enough to cause injury, but again, because it's heavy, it won't move. So I think it's pretty safe. And Pikachu loved this thing. He would always sleep here. He spent most of his time here, unless it was really cold in the winter. Then he would spend his time on the heater down here. But basically, anytime it was even not super cold, he would sleep here. So Ma-kun, he seems to like this wooden perch back there, or sometimes he goes inside of this little house, or sometimes he hangs out on this little perch up there. He doesn't seem too enamored with the idea of a stone, but I think he just didn't have one in his previous cage at the shop, and so he's not used to it, or maybe it's not that hot yet, so he just doesn't feel the need for it. But I think it's definitely an interesting contraption, and I think it's definitely a good investment. The good thing is that, and it even comes with a suction cup to open it, right? I think the good thing is that when I bought this, it came with 3 of these ice packs. Now, one of these ice packs will last numerous hours, probably like 8-9 hours. And if you have 3, you honestly only need 2, because one can be in the freezer while you're using the other one. So having 3 means that if it was the dead of summer and super hot, and the electricity went out for 2 days, you'd probably be okay. So I think it's something, I've heard of all sorts of makeshift solutions where people have, they'll put ice in mason jars and surround their chinchillas with it or something. I think having something like this it's safe, it's simple, it's easy. The price was something like 50 to 60 US dollars, but I think you could get it cheaper for a little bit smaller one, or with 1 or 2 of the ice packs instead of 3. I figured it's expensive either way, I may as well just buy the highest end one. So that's one product that I think is very interesting and I've not seen in the English books. So the other product, or I should say set of products, is there's this brand called Kawai, and they sell cages and numerous other things for small animals. Now, I don't love their cages because I think they're a little bit small for chinchillas. Most of the chinchilla shops in Japan use them, but and they are high quality, but I just think they're a little small. So their cage, this is kind of like a Ferret Nation clone type of thing. Their cage is probably only about 75% as high, maybe like this, and probably about 75% as wide. So it's definitely smaller than this. Maybe it's okay for one chinchilla, but room air is better, I think. Anyway, they sell, besides cages, they sell a lot of stuff. So they sell these litter boxes, you can see here, and then there's another one down here. They're 2 different styles, but they're both from the same maker, right? They sell this little food tray here. They sell not this one, but they have similar things to this. So they have one that's similar to this. It has like a mesh top and bottom and a place to put a hay floor, and it has holes on the corners, which I'll get into in a minute. And then they sell a smaller one, which if you look at any Japanese chinchilla YouTube video, guaranteed every single chinchilla owner in Japan has one of these, but it looks like this box except that it ends here, and again it has holes on the corners, right? And usually there'll be a hole on this side and the other side and the front, and maybe on the top or the back, but usually it'll have 1 or 2 sides that don't have the big round hole. So basically speaking, and the holes that you would see here and here and here and here on the corners, they're the same size as these holes, right? And this is the same manufacturer. So what happens is that they use these little nuts and bolts and washers. So if you see, this is actually a nut and bolt that are made out of wood, and these washers are made out of wood. So the idea here, that there's several advantages to this, right? I mean, the disadvantage is, of course, that they can eat it, but the advantage is, number one, if you have a metal screw, then you're going to need a metal backing for it to screw into. And if you look at some of the products that are typical that I've seen, like in the US, they have something like this metal nut embedded into the wood. Now that is small enough that a chinchilla might get that in its mouth, and I would say that metal is unavoidable because your cage is almost certainly going to be metal, but having little metal nuts and sharp screws and stuff is probably something you want to avoid as much as you can. Honestly, I'd rather have a fabric or rope rather than this metal chain there, right? So having these wooden screws, and this has them as well, right, means there's a little bit less chance of them biting it and injuring themselves. So that's number one. Number two is that because the size is the way that it is, you can use them not only for ledges, but you can use them for things like this. Whereas if this were using a screw and bolt, you'd need like metal washers on each side and everything, right? You can use them for this. You can use them for things like this if you have the right size holes connected. You can use them to clamp 2 things together. So if you get the smaller boxes, you can actually clamp 2 or 3 of them together in a different or unusual shape. It's easy to clamp things to the top of the cage or whatever. So you can see they're used for these wood chew toys that go on the wall. They're used for the boxes. Again, this is not the actual box, but I'll send you a video. The one I had was pretty chewed up, so I ordered a new one. You can use them for these. This is actually made out of Timothy hay, but it also attaches to the wall the same way. And they're used for these shelves. So if you take a look at the shelf inside, you'll see it's the same thing, right? So all of their stuff uses these wooden screws, and the screws are compatible and they can be used to connect stuff together. So like for this little perch here, you can put two of them next to each other and attach them using these things. And they also have just various different items that all can connect using the same stuff. So the second thing I wanted to go over, their toilets and food bowls and everything are ceramic. So sometimes I see plastic items. I much prefer the ceramic ones. This hay feeder is also from them, and you can see it also has these holes for the same nuts and bolts if you want to attach it to the wall. I had to do that with Pikachu because he would go crazy in his cage and knock everything over. Makun, as you can see, is much more relaxed, right? I mean, he doesn't really get that hyper. So the second thing that I wanted to mention is that if you look at a shelving of another brand, you see it's completely flat. And if you've ever seen a hyper chinchilla running in like a room with a hardwood floor, when they try and stop running, they end up sliding across the room like some kind of car in Tokyo Drift or whatever, right? And if they slam into the wall, it's not that big of a deal, but if they're slamming into like metal bars or something, it could be a little worse. So these shelves here, these perches here, you can see they have grooves in them, kind of etched into them so that it gives a really good grip. Now, I know, for example, this cage came with these like ladders that have metal bars. So obviously those give a good grip, but maybe too good of a grip, right? You can, chinchilla can break their feet on that. So this is a good balance because it gives a good grip, but at the same time, it's not going to hurt their feet. So their perches have that, and they also actually have a ramp that has that. So if you take a look, they have a ramp in the same style that has that. So this ramp actually does have metal hooks on the end because it's made to attach into the holes of something else. But I think it's a reasonable trade-off, and it also has holes on the side in case you want to use the screws to attach it to something. So overall, I like the products from the Kawai brand because they use the wooden screws, and because they have ceramic pieces, and because they have these grooves. So the downside of their products, one is they're not the cheapest, and two is that the wooden pieces are made of pretty soft wood, or at least so it seems. So just to give an example, this shelf has been here less than a week, and you can see it's been fairly worn down, right? If we take another look at a different shelf, maybe you can see one that's not as worn down. Well, actually this one is even more worn down, right? So for whatever reason, this one he wasn't so interested in. I'm not sure why this is like that, but you can see this one is a little bit worn down. So it seems to be a little bit softer than the wood of something like this shelf, which this has been here a lot longer, and it's still only about worn down about the same amount. So it is something to bear in mind. It's not like I'm replacing the shelves either every week or anything like that, so I'm not terribly concerned about the cost, but it is something to consider. So again, the brand is Kawai. If you're writing it in English, be Kawai, which is, it's not actually the word cute like some people might think. It's a different kanji, but yeah, I think they make pretty good stuff, and if anybody else has tried it and wants to write a review, that's fine. Normally I will post these videos in both English and Japanese, but this time I'm doing English only because I think that most of the Japanese chinchilla owners already know about this brand. So thanks and goodbye.